Hey, Algebra. Today we're talking about interpreting functions. Uh, Actually, we're interpreting the graph of functions. So, a couple things we're going to be looking for are the x-intercepts, the intercepts and symmetry. The intercepts, right? The intercepts of a graph are points where the graphs intersect an axis. So, on this graph over here, we have the x-axis is horizontal, and then you have the y-axis is vertical, and so that's every time. The points where they intersect, the graph intersects. So if you look right here, the graph intersects the y-axis. That is the y-intercept. It's the point where it crosses that particular axis. The point that crosses the x-axis, which is right here, is called the x-intercept. All right. So you're going to be looking at graphs, and you're going to tell me where does it cross the x-axis, where does it cross the y-axis, and you're going to label those points. A graph possesses line of symmetry in a line if each half of the graph on the other side matches up exactly. So if I were to draw a line anywhere on a straight line, the line on the other side is going to equal the line on the each side. So they're very similar. They're equal to each other. So that's a line of symmetry. So here's an example. Architecture. The graph shows a function that approximates the shape of the Gateway Arch. So the Gateway Arch is the big arch out in St. Louis, where x is the distance from the center point in feet, and y is the distance in height. So um, here's the center, 240 feet to the right, 240 feet to the left, and then the height of the arch is over 560 feet. Um, Identify the function as linear or nonlinear, then estimate and interpret the intercepts and describe and interpret any symmetry. So the first thing we're going to look at, linear or nonlinear. So linear means it's a line. Does this graph look like a line? No. So since it's not a line, it's nonlinear. It's a nonlinear graph. Next, we'll look at y-intercept. So where does this cross the y-axis? So the y-axis is the vertical, right? So it's the vertical, so it crosses the y-axis right here. And so if you notice, these are going up by 80 feet. Each box is 80, so 80, 160, 240. So then 560 plus 80 is 640. So that means that the y-intercept is 640 feet. So this means the height of the arch is 640 feet. Next, we're going to look at the x-intercept. So if you notice this x-intercept, it intercepts the x here and here, which means that there's two x-intercepts. So each of these boxes is going by 80 as well. So 80, 160, 240, that would be 320, negative 320, and positive 320. So our x-intercepts are negative 320 comma 0 and 320 comma 0. So if you notice x-intercepts, the y value is going to be 0, and for y-intercepts, the x value is going to be 0. So the x value is 0, and in the y-intercepts, the x-intercepts, the y values are 0. And then we're going to take a look at symmetry. All right. So if I were to draw a line down the y-intercepts, if you notice that if I were to fold that graph over, then it would be symmetrical on both sides. They equal up. So the line of symmetry is x equals 0. So x equals 0. would be the line of symmetry. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 of these with you, and then you can go from there. All right. So right whale population. So if I'm looking at the graph, the first thing I want to look at is if it's linear or nonlinear. So the first one is linear. So it is linear. Then estimate and interpret the intercepts of the graph and any line of symmetry. So if I'm going to put my x-intercept, so let's do our x-intercept where it crosses the x-axis. So x-intercept equals, so it's going to be 4, 6, 8, 10, 10, comma, 0. So that's my x-intercept, 10, comma, 0. My y-intercept, so I'll just put y. Y-intercept is going to be 0. My x is going to be 0. And my y is 240. So 0, comma, 240. And then line of symmetry. Really, if I were to draw any line, so, well, in this case, my line of symmetry would be, this line is right here. So my line of symmetry would be about y equals x. So, but I'm not worried about line of symmetry too much. Number 2, I'm just going to tell you guys can write it down. Is it linear or nonlinear? Well, a line would be a straight line. That is not a straight line, so it is nonlinear. The x-intercept, actually it has 2 x-intercepts. It has one x-intercept at 0, 0, and it has one x-intercept at, looks like 5, comma, 0. The y-intercept, it only crosses the y-axis at 0, 0. So the y-intercept is 0, 0. And there are no lines of symmetry. There's no line that I can put on this graph where it folds over nicely. Number 3, the price of gasoline per gallon in years since 1987. This is nonlinear. It's not a line. My x-intercept, if you notice, it does not have an x-intercept. It doesn't cross the x-axis, so no x-axis, no x-intercept. My y-intercept, it starts out right here. So my y-intercept would be 0, comma, 1. And again, there is no axis of symmetry. There's no line of symmetry. So, all right, guys, go ahead, have a good day, and let me know if you have any questions. All right.